Hi, this is Shanshan, the artist from shanshan.co, and I do eBay specials. Today I'm going to review Bohemian Rhapsody. So Bohemian Rhapsody is a movie based off of Queen, and primarily centered around Freddie Mercury, who is the lead singer. So it takes us from the very beginning where Freddie Mercury is kind of going out to these clubs, listening to rock music, and he spots this band. He kind of knows a lot of lyrics. He's like, "Oh, this is awesome! I want to meet the band." So he goes, tries to meet the band. Who he runs into his this girl at the time, and he kind of flirts around with her. But then he goes outside, talks to the band, and the band just right after the show had lost their lead singer. He said, "I'm done with this. I'm going back to school." And they're like kind of wondering what they're gonna do, because they're also students too. Like one's an electrical engineer, one's studying for law, and they're kind of debating what they should do with the rest of their life. Like most rock musicians that don't make it. And so he comes up, he pitches them and says, "Hey, I'm a writer. Maybe I could write some songs." And he's like, "Get out of here, kid." And so instead of being flabbergasted, he just starts singing, "Ah," and he says fabulous lows and highs in his voice, and he sings one of their songs that he knows really well. And so they're like, "Wow, this sounds like a really good lead singer." So next thing you know, he's in the band, and they're kind of touring around little local gigs here and there around UK. They're like, "Oh, we need to do an album. We need an album." And they're like, "Where are we gonna get the money for an album, right?" So he's like, "We'll sell the van, right?" And they're like, "How are we gonna tour then, right?" He's like, "It's not gonna matter. Once we get the album out, it's gonna blow up, right?" So they do their first album. Kind of normal, 70s rock music, and it's pretty popular, right? Goes to #1, so they get bigger tours, and so for there evolves into their their second album. Like they're wondering what they want to do, and so they're pitching this producer, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we want to bring in these operatic sounds," and they're like, "Opera? Are you kidding me? It's heavy rock. Why would you mix opera in there?" And he's like, "No, just trust us." So they go and make the album, come back, and this is when they make Bohemian Rhapsody, one of their famous albums, and the guy's like, "This is crap. Are you kidding me? No one's going to headbang to this in a car." And it's hilarious because that character is played by Mike Myers, who plays in Wayne's World. So if you go back to the 80s, you'll see him singing in that Wayne's World, which was very iconic because I got kind of reintroduced to Queen. I mean, I knew Another One Bites the Dust and a couple songs, but that kind of pulled it full circle. And I was like, "Who's this band, man? That sings with this high-pitched band." It's a very 70s sound for heavy metal, and not so common nowadays. So and the story goes from there, and then eventually, the band struggles between themselves, a lot of jealousy between the different writers and who writes the music, who gets credit, who gets paid. And then at some point, CBS comes up and approaches Freddie through one of his boyfriends at the time. And his boyfriend says, "Hey, maybe you should do some solo albums, you get all this money." And then, so he says, "Screw the band." And then at that point, he finds out he has AIDS. So then he's like, "Oh, dude, what am I going to do?" And he ditches the boyfriend, and the band gets together and do Live Aid. It's kind of like their last big hurrah, before Freddie Mercury really declined. So they ended the movie there, which is really awesome because that's an awesome concert. And they do lots and lots of songs through the whole thing, so that's really awesome. I liked it a lot better, say, than my last review, which A Star Is Born, which has Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. And it was a nice film, but it was kind of like fake singer, fake story. I mean, Lady Gaga's obviously a real singer, and she wrote the songs for that, but it's not she wrote these songs specifically for the movie. So it has nothing to do, it's kind of like this, she plays a singer who's, they make up the songs for the thing, and then there are songs that Bradley can play because they're simple enough. So, that movie's okay, and then at the end, Bradley's like, which is kind of like, dude, you're a performer. You're going to let down your audience over suicide? It's really kind of sad. But, that story works, but this one just, boom! I almost feel sorry for A Star Is Born because once this comes out, no one's going to go see A Star Is Born. It's so much better. That film isn't bad, but this is just so much better because it's based on a real life story. The guy, he just has so many elements with the character. Like another element besides the whole band evolution is you have this love interest, right? He meets the girl first in the bar, turns into his wife, but then as he tours around, he notices like, hey, maybe I like guys as well, and he's bisexual. And so he starts to dip into that, and then obviously that destroys his marriage. But he still wants to keep the marriage, which is totally crazy. He's so egocentric. He doesn't think it's going to affect the marriage. And, that marriage falls apart, and that really breaks his heart that he's destroyed that marriage. But at the same time, he has his lover, and his lover takes him down this dark path and almost ruins Queen as a band completely. So that has a really good love story connection going full circle. And as well, this was the 70s. The 70s, it's, the hippies and... Well, the hippies were the 60s, but 70s, this dark, really approach. People are protesting. The Vietnam War went to crap. And so it has this kind of dark overlay over the society. People are just partying, like the war's over, let's just have fun. Freddie Mercury being this great performer, he has all this access to all of these fans, every concert he does. And so obviously he has lots and lots of lovers, and this gets him in trouble, and then he gets AIDS, which is the real story. Queen stopped because Freddie Mercury died in '91, so it has this really full circle. Like his singer's career is cut short, although one could say at the time, '91, he's 45, so that's young for a singer still. But that you do kind of tap out then, as far as you're still performing and everything, but you're maybe not resonating with the audience as well. And at the time, say The Sound of Madonna was coming out, Phil Collins is coming out, U2 is coming out, and so that's replacing all the stuff that happened in the '70s with this heavy metal and really loud music. The '80s is a completely different sound than the '70s. There's some rock bands, and it gets faster with, say, Metallica, but really the sound, that's one of the sounds, but a lot of the sound was, they just changed to more of this pop sound. It's very different, it's almost like a reversion back to the early '60s, and it kind of came back to a pop sound versus a rock sound. Rock still existed, but this pop sound kind of became more popular. So you really see this evolution where Queen is kind of falling a step, but then the singer dies. Ironically, like right when the singer dies, it came out, and then people reconnected with the band, and boom, sold 16 million of Bohemian Rhapsody. That album took it to #2. And now with this movie, I hands down think it's going to rise up the rank of iTunes and going to do very well. Not that the band needs it. They did really well in their lifetime. And some of the band members are still around. A lot of the former band members actually helped this band kind of generate the sound, the look, the performance. So the acting is phenomenal. The performance is actually really good. The guy that plays Freddie Mercury, this guy, he just blows it out of the park. And he's been in other films, so he's a good range on his skill set. So I think this is going to launch his career to much bigger things. It's a really great part to play because it's very timeless. It's kind of, if you go see, like when I was working in the cinema, I saw The Doors, and I saw it over and over and over again. And it was the only movie I really enjoyed seeing over and over again because they always had these great songs in it. And, I'm just thinking now, it's like, man, I wish I worked at the cinema now, dude. I could go see this movie every day for like hundreds of times. It'd be awesome. I wouldn't have any regrets because they played like so much music in here that you're really going to love it. Now, as far as the new fans, it was interesting. There was a family sitting next to me. The kids, they didn't know the story of Freddie Mercury and the whole band at all, so they just thought it's a rock band. And the father's sitting there and he's explaining, hey, this guy's, he also dates guys. And they're like, oh my God, he's gay, And so this is talked about in the film as well. These young kids, his father's trying to teach them, that's their first exposure to gay sex in a way. They don't really show gay sex, but they're obviously showing that Freddie Mercury was gay or bisexual, right? He still loves his wife, even though it fell apart. Yeah, they cover the diciness of, coming out as gay with AIDS at the time. It was seen as really a gay disease, and they were some of the earliest population that was highly affected, especially in San Francisco where I live. It had a really deep impact, and just generation of guys just died off, and generation of women died off, and this was just completely horrible. So you see, like, he's trying to pretend he's not gay, but then he gets more and more comfortable with his persona on the stage, so people start questioning, hey, is this guy gay? It seems a little off. And so the press is really drilling him on that and trying to expose him, for a story. Oh my God, this star is gay. And that was the real feeling back then. I mean, when I was in high school, this is crazy enough. We debated whether Boy George was gay, pretending to be gay. Did he dress that way? But he's normal behind the scenes. It's completely preposterous, right? The guy's, the top gay star of the 80s. But, since we came back from suburbs of Chicago, it was, even back then, it was just no one knew what gay was as a high school or junior high, right? And obviously the gay kids that were gay, they were just kind of feeling out, and they're like, wow, why don't I connect with women? They're kind of trying to be the heterosexual route, and then they don't really see it, and they're like, I'm kind of attracted to the other sex, and they don't know why. And so they're still, feeling themselves out, and then they have their parents saying, oh, you must be straight. And so, it was a really hard thing. You saw George Michael. He pretended to date girls to cover the fact that he was gay all the way back with Wham, right? Like, I never understood why he split from Wham, but obviously the relationship, if I think back, it makes sense, right? But I didn't know at the time, I thought, wow, why did he break up with that? Wham was so cool. But yeah, if it's his boyfriend, the guy screws him over, or the relationship's over, you don't want to work with your ex-boyfriend, right? So it covered a lot of topics, a real life story, really good story arc, the arc of AIDS, you see a little bit of this as well. The arc of a band, from the beginning to the middle to breaking apart and all that drama, which a lot of bands go through, and as well as the love interest. So that has all these great tension, and you have 3 different plot lines, and they all just in sync the whole way, as opposed to other movies like I just saw this horror film Suspiria, which was good, but it was just like the plot lines just didn't come together. And this one just you know, boom, 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 stacked on top of each other, and they make all sense. Overall, really great movie. I didn't see any flaws. I would love to go see this again. It's 2 hours 15, but you don't feel like it at all. And a lot of people stay to the end just to hear the historical sound where they show the real Freddie Mercury, and then you're like, oh, this was Freddie Mercury? It looked so different compared to the actor, right? And the actor's pretty close at certain stages of Freddie Mercury's career, but when he does Live Aid, he has kind of a little bit longer, like shaggier, older Beatles look. And they didn't show that, you know, that he kind of had gone from this slick look to like a little, they cut that out. They just left like long hair to the short hair, right? So, you know, it's kind of an easier story evolution. But overall, I really liked the film. I hope you guys like my review. Give a thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe below. Hope to see you on the next movie review. Thanks, guys.